So today in the lab we're going to finish up this Apple IIgs net booting saga. And I'm back on the PowerMac G3. And the reason for this is that Classic Mac OS has an excellent Apple II emulator called Bernie to the Rescue. Now in the last episode we got the IIgs booting, but we don't have an operating system to boot from. So like it boots over the network, but it ultimately fails. Now, according to the AppleShare documentation, the next thing that we're supposed to do is actually net boot the IIgs and then use the installation disks to populate that AppleShare volume with the relevant GSOS system files. That takes a long time, requires a lot of swapping disks, really annoying. So I'm going to use Bernie to the Rescue to populate a disk image and use that instead, and that'll be much, much faster, as you see. So first thing here is that I have Bernie to the Rescue as well as GSOS 6.0.1 copied down to a big data archive I have here. I'm going to install both of these on my work volume. Install or copy, as the case may be, however you want to call it. And then since we're working with ProDOS volumes, I need to disable file sharing. So I'm going to go down here and say turn file sharing off. When file sharing is on, you can't mount ProDOS volumes. So we're turning it off here temporarily while we do this action. Then next I'm going to use the disk copy utility, and I am going to create a new image. And we'll save this here on the work volume. We'll call this netboot, and we're going to do a custom image size. So ProDOS volumes can only be 32 megabytes big. It's an 8-bit file system, so those are the limitations. 32 megabytes. GSOS requires somewhere in the range of 2 to 5. So I think I could get away with a 2.5 megabyte volume here, but I'm going to be safe and just do 5. 10 megabytes, which is another like preset option here, way too big. So we'll just do this 5 megabyte custom volume. Hit save. And it's created the volume. Now it wants us to format it. We'll choose ProDOS 5 megabytes here and hit erase. Right. So now I can quit out of disk copy, and we see we have our volume here mounted. I'm going to eject that because the actual image is here on our G3 work partition. Alright, so now that we have this image, this hard drive image, we can attach that to Bernie to the Rescue. So let's start this guy up here. So first thing I like to do in Bernie, for this operation at least, is go into the preferences and make sure the built-in floppy drive isn't shown. This will allow us to mount the maximum amount of disks that we can, so we don't have to do any in-emulator disk swapping. Next, I need to bring up the disks window, which because I've done this before here, it's already present. But if you don't see this got a disk window, you can go up here to Windows and hit Disks. And now we need to mount these. And so I generally mount them kind of in order. We have an install disk, a system disk, 2 system tools disks. Oops. And a fonts. So that's 5 disks total. And then we also want to mount our ProDOS volume. So netboot.imj. So with all these mounted, we can go in here to setup and do reset. That'll reboot our Mac. And it'll start booting off the install disk. So this is the GSOS installer. And we want to click change disk here until we see netboot. Netboot is the name of our hard disk image. Now this means we're installed to the NetBoot volume when it's listed here. So next we're going to want to customize. So I need to select what I want to install here. And I want to keep it pretty minimum. So the absolute minimum for this is fonts all. And then once we start selecting things, we'll want to hold the left Apple key to multi-select. So fonts all, network AppleShare, network server quick logoff, and network server startup. So those 4 items are our absolute minimum. Now I have some other stuff, so I might as well install this now. So I want to install Teach, I want to install the 5 1/4 inch floppy drive support, and I want to install the Unidisk 3.5 support. I also want to install the DOS 3.3. This is Apple DOS, not MS-DOS. HFS and Pascal disk formats. And that's probably everything for right now. Those are the most important things. So once we've done with our selection, we can hit install here. And this is a warning about installing this to a hard drive, right? This install that we're going to do on this NetBoot volume, you won't be able to boot it like a hard drive. Once we copy these files to the Powerbook in the network boot location, it'll start up fine. We want to perform this update, and now to run through this. Alright, so that was pretty quick. Now we can quit out of this, cancel, shut down, and we can quit out of Bernie to the rescue. So now we have this NetBoot image set up. If we were to mount it again, we could take a look at what's inside of here. And you can see we got a system folder and a few other things. So this is great. This is what we need. So now I'm going to copy this over to the Powerbook. Okay, we're back on the Powerbook 165. So the first thing we need to do is we need to quit out of AppleShare. And we'll do this immediately. So I had previously copied over the netboot.image that we just created onto this volume here. So I'm going to drag this over into disk copy and mount it. Again, this is why we had to quit out of AppleShare, because this is a ProDOS volume, not a Mac volume. So let's open this boy up. All right. So there's a bunch of stuff in here. And if we look at our PB system, we can see there's a system folder, and then some of these I know to be like text files, like what's new, readme, shortcuts, and then Teach is a program, specifically a text editor. So in order to boot, we need to copy all of what's in our NetBoot system folder into this system folder on our primary hard drive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a backup of the stuff that's in here. And then open up System on the NetBoot, and we're going to select everything and copy it over. This will take a minute. Alright, now that we have that copied over, we have our main system folder copied over. I'm also going to copy over Teach and this basic.system. And I'm going to put the basic.system in the system folder. Good deal. I'm not going to copy these readmes and shortcuts, at least for right now. don't really need those text files. Alright, so let's start back up the AppleShare file server. And it's going to complain about this netboot volume. So we'll just eject this after the fact. It'll be alright. And now let's go back up and set our startup information again. So we select the administrator user, go to startup, set Apple II startup information, and this time for our startup app, we want to select Finder. So that'll boot into the GSOS GUI. And let's verify this. And now we can switch back over to the 2GS and try this again. Alright, let's try this again. So we're reset the 2GS and we'll continue to restart the system. See our dots here, so that's good. This time I have multiple machines powered on at the same time, so I have to select which one I want to boot from. We of course want to boot from the Powerbook 165. Want to log in as a registered user. And we just want to mount, at least for right now, the PB system volume. And this is starting to look good. This is GSOS starting up. Oh no. And we failed. Now, I happen to know why this is. So let's go back to the Powerbook 165 and talk about our error. Okay, so when I installed AppleShare, I installed the 2GS boot up code from the AppleShare version 3 distribution. However, GSOS 6.0.1 has an updated version of that, and I need to install that. So that was my error there before. So let's exit out of the server and exit out of the AppleShare admin, and let's install these updated boot programs for the Apple IIgs. So these were distributed with System 6.0.1, and they were disk number 7. So and I have that here. Drag that over to disk copy so it'll mount. And we'll run the installer. Install here. Alright, so now that that's set up, let's start back up AppleShare, make sure that our Apple II startup information is still the same, and we'll retry booting the 2GS. Alright, let's verify our Apple II startup information. So it's still the same, set to System Finder and our home directory there. So hit cancel. And we'll do verify this just to make sure. Okay, so let's see if we can boot now. Alright, so let's reset the system. Get our dots, that's good. Now notice there's an updated version number here. Before it said 2.2 and now it says 3.0. And there's an updated version number here too. This says file server login 1.5 instead of the previous 1.4. So this is good. We've got an update. So boot off of the 165. Log in as a registered user. And we'll only mount the PB system volume again. Alright, so this is now moving along. There's some disk activity, so that's better. Oh no. Another error. Alright, so I missed another step. So let's go do that step right now. And switch back to the Powerbook 165. Okay, so I'm back on the Powerbook. I've shut down AppleShare and I've mounted that netboot volume again. And if we look on this volume, one of the things that we didn't copy was this icons folder. And that's what the boot up sequence was complaining about, the lack of an icons folder. And I'm not an expert enough with GSOS to know what this is actually for. I'm assuming it has something to do with icons. But this folder, along with the file in it, needs to be present on your system volume. So not the system folder in here, but just the volume that it's on. And it doesn't seem to need to be present on other AppleShare volumes. Like if you mount a volume after you boot up, it doesn't need an icons folder. So I'm a little bit mystified by this, but you know, I copy it from the netboot volume into here, and now finally we should be able to boot. So I'm going to eject this and start everything back up, and once it gets started back up, we'll try this boot again from the 2GS side. Alright, let's try this again one more time. So we'll reset the Apple 2GS. We see dots, that's good. Okay, boot from the Powerbook 165. We use a registered user. And we're just mounting the PB system volume. Now, as I'm watching on the Powerbook 165, this is taking quite a lot of processing power. There's a little percent monitor with AppleShare, and it's going well above 50% sometimes. So that might mean that this Powerbook, while it's doing its job right here, is definitely a little under-equipped to handle, say, you know, a lab of these. Alright, and here we are. We are booted into GSOS. Now that was real time. I didn't cut that any, unlike I've been doing with some of the Mac stuff. So that is as long as it takes to boot. I only flipped away a little bit to show the activity monitor for AppleShare. So really relatively quickly. I think that's probably slower than floppy disk to boot up, but it seems pretty snappy once it's actually booted up. And I can load applications off of here, like this Teach application, which is again just a text editor. So again, a little slow. But not really too much worse than floppy disks, if floppy disks were the only thing that you had. And then obviously once things are loaded, you know, it's pretty fast. Don't save changes. And quit.